Alrighty, so just like last October, a little bit different, but basically the idea is to watch 31 horror-related movies in the month of October, but as you can see, it's October 23rd, and so we've already watched 31 movies to basically get this video out before Halloween. So this gives people about a week watching the video to then, maybe check out some of these, but unlike last time where it was your kind of standard tier list where it's S, A, B, C, D, E, F, this is more of a point system, and it's more of a aggregating score based off other scores of the movie's attributes, as you can see: cinematography, acting, scare, story, plotline, monster antagonists, and there's a little bit more I can go through, but basically it's going to be pointing those things and then a total score, and we're going to go through 31. They are not in any particular order necessarily, except for they are the order that we watched the movies in. And it's not just 2024 movies. It could be at any time. It's just movies we haven't seen before. So each year we're trying to do 31 horror movies we've never seen. So having said that, and my wife will be next to me and will also offer some input, and we're here to discuss. So I guess we'll just start with the first movie,
Yes, okay.
which is Lake Mungo. And so the thing with Lake Mungo is that it's every time you're going to look at horror movies or a horror list, whatever, you're going to see Lake Mungo on it. And so I had no idea what the premise was, the story or anything.
I had been wanting to watch it because, like you said, it's on every list
Yeah.
of horror movies you have to watch.
And obviously horror is subjective, but I was going to go into it thinking like, okay, maybe it involves a lake or something crazy, and it's more of a movie about grief, I suppose. You do kind of see how each character handles the death of a family member, and I suppose that's unique. It's a fake documentary, mockumentary kind of thing, like the Blair Witch, and another movie we'll be talking about on here called the Pohopsy tapes or whatever.
Kind of found footage as well. 'Cause you
Yeah,
find her camera
and
or her phone.
overall, it's like an interesting documentary, but at the same time, they add in like a random subplot that their neighbor was like a child molester and fucking their daughter, and then they show like a clip of it, which does really nothing. Like, it adds on to the grief that the parents feel,
Yeah.
but they never get caught, nothing. They just really don't do anything with it, and it kind of just like really drags on the oh, what was the secret, what was the, because
Yes.
they're like, yeah, we talked to the psychic, and it turns out our daughter who died went to talk to him beforehand, and
And he didn't say anything about it.
yeah, and then they're like, we're seeing our daughter's ghost, but it's actually our son photoshopping, and
And then plot twist. Oh, she was actually in the photo that he had photoshopped. She was in a different.
yeah,
It was, like,
yeah,
weird.
like at the end, the like ending credits is like, oh, actually he did photoshop those, but she was actually in all those pictures, and you're just like, so is it about grief or is it about ghosts? Because you find out everything's basically fake until the very end, where they're like, she was in some desert trip, and oh my god, she saw a ghost of herself run at her, and then she did she kill herself, or did she drown? And you're just like, okay, so you were trying to be all like emotional, grief and family loss, and then they're just like, spooky ghost, jump scare.
Yeah.
And so it just kind of deflates the, we're taking ourselves seriously, and we're about grief and trauma, and then they're like, spooky ghost, because that's what everyone needs at the end. Like,
Yeah. It was really odd because her phone footage where she sees, I guess, spoilers, she sees herself dead that the dad recognizes, but after that she starts acting weird, and she buries her phone and other belongings that they later go back and get.
that's right.
Which I don't think they fleshed out well enough, because it feels so like, wait, why is this happening? You know what I mean? Like, it just felt very odd.
Well, it was just like the whole thing is like, oh, she saw her death in the reflection of herself, and you're like,
The
okay.
part that doesn't make sense about that though is like she comes back from camp and they don't know anything's wrong.
Yeah.
And she acts completely normal, of course, until the day she disappears in the water. But
Yeah.
she was acting fine in between
Yeah.
that, so it's like she's
Well,
not possessed.
but you're just like, what? Huh? Like she saw an omen of her own death and then
Yes.
died, but they won't say how she died, and you're just like, I understand the theme, grief, trauma, whatever, but then the plot just gets so like
convoluted.
yeah, well,
completely.
90% of the movie you're like, okay, it's following the same structure. Then the last 10 minutes they're like, let's be like spooky horror movie.
Yeah.
And you're like, this doesn't really vibe with the rest of the movie.
Well, like you said too, it's like, oh, it's creepy. Okay, we're seeing a fake documentary about creepy things, but then there's a turning point where the son admits to faking everything, and you're like,
pretty early on.
Yeah, pretty early. So it's like all the wind is like broken out.
Yeah.
And then you're just like, okay.
Well, and then they were like, yeah, there's this guy. They're like, there's this guy on camera who's like staring at someone sleeping or something. And I was like, is that supposed to be the neighbor? Because there was one scene where it's someone like hiding behind a chair, and they were like, we think that's the neighbor. I was like, okay. And then they show someone else who's just like standing, looking down. I was like, wait, who's that? And I was just like, I mean,
what do you think was the spookiest part? That like kind of when you think of spookiness of this movie, what comes to you? Like,
when they were looking through the pictures and they're like, oh shit, or when they're like, hey, we were taking a footage at the lake and there's something in the background. Like, I kind of like that kind of stuff, but then it's deflated immediately by the brother being like, I faked it all.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, okay, well, you didn't even let me kind of reel that in.
Yes.
It was just like,
One part that I thought was creepy was when their neighbor was there trying to steal the videotape.
Yeah.
And they think it's a ghost, but then they realize,
he's sitting
he was
there behind.
there.
Yeah.
I thought that part was a little creepy.
Well, it kind of breaks your expectation where you're like, oh, it's a ghost movie. Oh God, no, it's some creepy motherfucker
like
breaking into my house. I mean, because when I look through here, so for Lake Mungo, I'm like cinematography out of 5. I'm like,
so my thing is they made a really clean looking documentary for sure.
No, I mean it looked like a real documentary.
And the footage, I don't think the fake footage they did, where it's like the son doing the footage, I didn't think they did that well because it was hard to see. It was a little too grainy to be scary. It
was hard to see, and what sucked is some of the photos where he's like, it's the ghost. I was like, it's so obviously fake. Mm-hmm. It's supposed to be like 2000, but I was like, this is so CG.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I mean, if 5 is supposed to be the best...
5 is like, I'm picturing like something that's almost like artistic, like something we would say is artsy.
I would probably say that this movie's like a 3.
So 3, like middle of the road.
I'd say it's middle of the road only because of like some of that stuff where I'm like, tried a little too hard with the fake edits and stuff.
I will say, when I was looking at photos to add in, they did the dead body pretty good.
Oh, yeah. When they show the dead body, that's
probably the only graphic thing in the whole movie, but I thought they did pretty good on that.
Then we'll do 3.5. Actually, I'm sorry. We'll still do a 3. Yeah. That goes more towards like set design or whatever. Acting, out of 5.
The thing is, they were all so believable that they were real people.
Yeah.
So I hate to say it was like really good acting.
I'll say the brother kind of came off comically like, I'm suspicious. Yeah. I'm crazy.
The mom and dad, they seem like you would pulled them in real life.
Yeah.
Though. And even the people they interviewed, the actors who were playing like the neighbors,
or like random people. Yeah. I mean, I'd probably say they're on a 4 out of 5. God, I mean, I can already tell you Scares is like a 1.
Yeah, 1 if not 0.
Like, I couldn't even really say this is a horror movie.
It wasn't. It was like...
barely a thriller.
It's a sad story about grief, like you said. Like, the horror elements are just like, they should have probably played more into like the plot of like grief and feeling that instead of trying to add the horror, because the horror of
Well, and if you're trying to make it so spooky, make it spooky. Yeah. I hate the... let's wait till the last 5 fucking minutes. Oh my God. And then it's not even scary. It's just like, oh, it's her, but with black holes for eyes and a mouth. Oh. Storyline, plot, I mean...
It was convoluted.
It was...
tried to do too much.
I'd say 3.5. It's interesting. It's like a murder mystery, but then they're just like pedophile neighbor. Oh, do nothing with that. And then they're like,
she saw her death.
yeah. And then
body.
they're like our psychic friend.
They're like, our son faked the footage, and the mom's like, I'm going into houses.
Yeah.
randomly.
0.
Yeah.
There is no.
Yeah.
I mean, the antagonist of the movie is like really. I mean, there's the pedophile neighbor. I guess you could say the ghost.
Yeah, it's like the ghost. I mean, it just literally looks like blurry people.
Yeah. So for gore, I wouldn't say it's really gore, but that dead body.
There's no gore, but
that
the
dead body
was done so well
yeah.
that it looked like. I mean.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Like.
I feel like at least a 2 just for that.
Even though it's just
scene,
that.
Yeah.
Watchability, enjoyability. Obviously, it's not the worst movie.
We were really complaining when we watched this because we were like.
Well, because it also just keeps going. Where I'm like,
yes.
Oh my god, how fucking long is this movie? This movie should be like an hour or like 45 minutes. Like.
Yeah.
Just get to the damn point. Most documentaries are like an hour.
Yeah.
So they're trying to make the fake documentary, but they're like, oh no, it's 90 minutes.
Yes.
And it's like, God. Watchability, I would say
I
1.
wouldn't watch it again. So.
I would maybe like, if I had like more movie snob friends or something, I'd be like,
what do you think?
Yeah. So I'm just gonna do 1. Overall score 14.5. Okay. Out of what?
I think.
I guess it doesn't matter. Or
so the max score you can
if everything was a 5
is 35.
Okay. So it's about middle of the road.
Yeah. 14. I put it in, or 14.5. I put it in okay category.
Okay.
Oh,
Now.
the Boogeyman.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, no, this isn't the Boogeyman.
I know this is.
Yeah,
Boogeyman.
this is Boogeyman 2005. So I technically had seen this movie when I was a kid, but it had been so long that I don't even remember. Movies like this, Darkness Falls, all the old classics, whatever. So having rewatched it, it's such a early 2000s movie with like the Saw like camera edit and very like sporadic, like zoom in, zoom out, and shakes.
Yes, I forgot about that. Yeah,
and like weird angles, and the story is like so like it's so Darkness Falls. I mean, it starts and it's like kid's dad, of course, there's nothing in the closet or under the bed, gets killed by a monster, and then they just think the dad left, and it's kind of like a rant. To me, it's a little like, I wouldn't say convenient, but it's like he's got a girlfriend, but he's got like mental issues, and she's of course in like a rich family, and they're but they don't really do anything with that. They establish that his girlfriend has like a rich family, and they're all upper class, but then they do nothing with it. The girlfriend doesn't even really act like that, so I was like, what does that bring to the table? It never comes back.
It doesn't. And I almost thought while watching this, like, he didn't even need to have the girlfriend. Like, he has the other love interest that he finds. So her being there, they have the scene at the hotel, which is actually a pretty good scene, but she almost seems like forced into this movie.
Well, because you could have even had it where replace the girlfriend, the blonde girl, with a sister, whatever.
Yeah.
Basically same impact.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't even seem like he likes her.
Yeah, they seem like they don't know each other very well.
Yeah, and she's always like, and it's like, well, how long have they, like, it's not established, like, how long have they been together? Yeah. Because, like, you're already with the family, so you've been there.
They go to the family, and then it kind of feels like the family asks him questions, and the girlfriend also doesn't know the answer.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, maybe they don't know each other.
But it's, like, such a classic, like, something happened when you were a kid, you're an adult now. And then you're like,
you gotta overcome.
Yeah, he's like, I'm gonna overcome my fear, so I'm gonna go back to the house to spend the night. And his uncle's like, well, I'm repairing it, but it's kind of a piece of shit, but sure. And then of course his like elementary school sweetheart still lives next door.
Oh yes.
And they start whatever, and it's.
I will say I did like the concept of the time travel through the doors. I thought that was a really cool element that I don't know if they did well enough.
Well, they only do it like twice.
Yeah.
They introduce you kind of go like, wow, how's all this shit happening? And then actually it's really at the end you get to actually see how it works, and you're like, oh wow, so the Boogeyman can actually like go through time and can go anywhere.
Yeah.
And so you're like, okay, and it can also like take people anywhere, because when he's like opening doors and it's going to like back to the house, back to the hotel, and you're like, what? And then going back in time, forward in time, and you're like, wow, okay, that's trippy.
Yeah.
So I wish it was, if it's going, it almost went for like a psychological thriller aspect where you've already established he's been in and out of an asylum his whole life. He's there to face his fears. You could have really played on the fact that he's fucking crazy, possibly.
That's what I thought.
And then you could have started doing like, oh god, you know, like almost like Candyman, where it's like he wakes up and he's like, oh my god, like I'm covered in blood, but my girlfriend's missing.
Yeah.
What's happening? And then you could start having it where it's like, you know, at the end, that's when the time travel and like dimension warping shit comes, where you're like, oh, like.
Yeah, you're so right, because I did like how they were setting it up where it's like, is he crazy? Because he drives the old friend to the hotel, and she's like, you're crazy.
Yeah.
She's like, you just killed your girlfriend.
Yeah.
And it kind of makes the audience think like, oh, is that what just happened? You know, because you don't know. But. And
I mean, the monster design sucked. It's the most stereotypical fucking ghoul.
It's like
ghoul. Yeah, it's horrible PS1 CGI, but it's just your most standard ghoul, where it's like a skinny, bony, like legged, armed, pale skinned ghoul, but it's got like wrinkly fat belly and like boobs, and it's just like generic bald. Like, it's the most generic design, and like, you know, I think it's like PG-13, so it's like all the kills are off screen. And at the end, you're kind of like, what? Like, to defeat the Boogeyman, you just have to, like, destroy things that he kind of, like, cursed, or
I think. I can't
something like
remember.
That
part was so not memorable.
But then,
there's, like, another plot with a ghost girl.
Yeah.
It's one of those, like, horror plot things that you and me kind of, like, always talk about when we're watching, where it's like, oh, she's not real, or she's a ghost.
They make it so obvious right from the get-go, where you're like, she's a ghost, because she's just like, I'm appearing at night in the shed, and I don't know where to go, and then you're just like,
and nobody else is interacting with her, and, you know what I mean?
And you're just like, it's fake.
I kind of hate that trope. I wish that they had done that better. It probably would have been creepier, maybe. But
well, that would have been another good part of if it was like a psychological movie, where maybe he like kidnapped her from the asylum, and then is like not even aware that like she's hiding from him because he's like brought her out here, you know, or something like that.
Ooh, yeah.
And it would have just been like, you know, just like little things. And of course, you know, and even talking about this, you know, cinematography is the most, for this movie, the most 2000s shit you'll see. I mean, it's standard.
I kind of like it though.
Well,
and I feel like we need to give it points in watchability, because it's got such a style to it.
Well, it's that early 2000s style for sure. There were some really, really good filmed scenes, especially when it's like someone in a house and it's like zooming into a door and people getting pulled, and you know, there were some cool stuff.
Yeah, you're right. I did like kind of like the color scale of the movie, even though, like you said, it's really early 2000s. I love the color scale of it, kind of always being kind of grayish.
Well, I was gonna say it's very mute.
Mute.
Bluish.
Yes.
Bluish gray. I mean, if 3 is middle of the road, I would say 3.5.
Yeah. I would not necessarily say any of the acting is good.
Yeah. It was very, again, early 2000s horror movie.
I think the best actor in the entire movie is the little girl.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, she was good.
She's the only one that seems like, even though it's obvious she's a ghost, she plays, obviously she is a little girl, but she plays this, like, serious kind of, like...
Yeah, like, and then even when she's supposed to be scared of the Boogeyman, she does a good job of, you know, acting scared and stuff. Somebody wants to be a part of this video.
Okay, she's, like,
hey.
acting out.
I know. Come on. Acting. So if 3 is average, I guess this would be like a 2.
I think 2, maybe 1.5 even.
Yeah. Scares. I can't remember if it was this movie or one of the movies we watched. It had like a stupid jump scare and it got you, but I can't remember.
No, that was the dang Alien VHS one. With we'll talk about it later.
Oh, okay.
Alien VHS. This one had a lot of jump scares that were easy to tell they were coming.
Oh, yeah, no, this is the movie where you were like, did you write it? Because I was like, watch, in 5 seconds it's going to be a jump scare.
Yes.
And it's like, doom.
Yeah.
I
think the jump scares were too predictable to even be
scary.
Like you said, the character design, he's goofy. I love it, but he's goofy, so it's like not very good.
Well, storyline plot, virtually nothing.
Well, it's as middle of the road, like, you know.
Well, it's just you know, my dad died and I have to go back to face my trauma. Ghost.
And my mom died in a insane asylum.
Oh yeah,
my
yeah,
GF
yeah.
comes and my old GF is there. I think it's 2.5.
Monster antagonist, I'm gonna say 1.
Yeah, let's give him a good old 1.
The most fucking just generic shit. Whoa.
You gotta click off.
Okay.
I don't think there's any gore. There's some blood in a bathtub.
So yeah, for gore, since it's again, I swear it's PG-13. It's virtually.
There's no gore. There's like a little blood in the bathtub.
So
1.
1.
Here's the thing. I think watchability and enjoyability should be maybe like a 3.5 to 4, because maybe not 4.
So I'd say a 3.
Because it's like I would watch it again just because it has
Yeah.
that vibe.
Well, yeah, I'd watch it again because it's what we grew up with.
Yes.
It's the bias of the nostalgia factor.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's pretty much why I added that category.
Less than Lake Mungo.
Does that seem right?
That does not seem right because I'd rather watch this than Lake Mungo.
Well, what's funny is Lake Mungo has a way better Rotten Tomatoes score than this one.
Oh, well, yeah, I can only assume.
Lake Mungo's got 62 on the popcorn meter, 95 on the... This one has 21 on the popcorn meter.
Well, what about for audience and critic?
I don't know. How do I tell that?
Well, you just have to...
took a screenshot.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. So that's critic and that's audience. Okay, so both hated it.
Yeah. Okay, When Evil Lurks.
So this is that Spanish movie.
Yes.
So this was was it on Amazon Prime or Shudder?
It's on Amazon Prime, Hulu, and
Okay.
Mungo, but I think we watched it on Hulu.
So this is a Spanish movie, like a possession movie, and I mean we're gonna rate it and stuff, but overall I liked it quite a bit. It's a unique concept where they don't really force it down your throat when they say it, but it takes place in a world where possession is common.
Yeah.
And the
I
cities.
don't even know if it's not common, but it's like people know about it.
Well, but it's happened enough where entire cities have like a protocol for if it happens near them.
And like the grandma was like, I've never met anyone who was possessed or like known of it, or like in person, but she knew stories about what you do.
Yeah. So, man, they're fighting. So the movie is basically about two brothers and the main brother, his family, trying to survive this possession curse that's basically fallen on them when they fail to properly dispose of a cursed body. And I mean, I don't know how to get real into it even more, but like, I think it did a good job of the pacing. I think my biggest complaint with the movie is I feel like it gets to a point where it just kind of drags.
Yeah.
Because at first you're like, okay, they're escaping this, they're doing this, and then you're just kind of like, it's just kind of dragging with like staying at that lady's house that the brother used to bang, the old lady, and him going to the church, and like you're just kind of like, okay, so now they're on a mission to find the cursed body they dumped earlier, and you know, like the one lady who can help them, they're immediately like, oh, let me be dumb. Oh, she's dead. And then they're like, here's a demon spawn baby. The end. And you're like, wait, what?
I almost forgot about the demon baby.
Yeah.
Because the main thing I remember about this movie is the cursed guy, how horrific he looked. That's like the main thing. That and the scene with the little girl is just like burned in my memory.
Oh, I mean, the scene I remember the most is when the wife gets cursed and she's just walking alongside the road holding her son, and she's got her hand through his skull, eating his his brain, and you're just like, oh god. I mean, this movie does not hold back on gore, and I wouldn't say it's necessarily scary, but it's like, it's unsettling. There's a lot of scenes
my
where,
God,
where
yeah.
you're like, oh god, like
And
ew.
it's like even more than unsettling because everything is so horrific. Like
Yeah.
they're killing children,
Yeah,
they're doing
yeah, yeah.
horrible things.
That's
and
right.
then like you're kind of like slightly hopeless because like
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. There's really not one point in this movie where you're like, this is gonna end good.
Exactly. There's no like pretending of like, oh, they're gonna get through
Yeah,
this.
no,
You never
it's
feel that at
it
all.
actually just gets worse.
Yes.
It gets progressively worse and worse. The acting is great. It just gets so like, good lord, and then like his autistic son, like ate the grandma or whatever, and he's like pulling the
Yes,
hair out of his
yes.
mouth. I was like, good lord.
Mhm.
For a possession type movie, I enjoyed it, pretty fairly. Well, like cinematography, they definitely had a lot of artsy shots.
Oh my god, it was probably a beautifully shot movie. I would say.
Yeah, like the lighting, a lot of stuff is very good. So if
They're really good at the like color saturations they
Yeah.
do. 'Cause
Yeah,
it's,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
some stuff you can tell they muted it so other things would be brighter and it looks really good.
and even if they did day for night shots, I mean they were great. Where
Yeah.
it's nighttime shots, but I can actually see what's happening.
Mhm.
Thank God. So I mean, I'd honestly say 4.5.
Very good.
Acting, I thought was good. I mean, what's interesting is I wonder if it's because I don't necessarily obviously understand Spanish.
That's true. I
that-
did kind of wonder that too.
that
'Cause I
I'm-
was like, they seem so
Yeah,
like in it.
because
and-
I can see the emotional like facial stuff, but voice wise I'm like, well, I don't speak Spanish, so I'm like, am
We're
I?
reading a subtitle.
Yeah, I'm
so
like,
it's
so am I not fully grasping? Like, could this actually be pretty normal?
Yeah. Who do you think the worst actor was? I think it was the lady who helps them.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like her
Well-
acting fell super flat compared to everybody
Well,
else's.
her acting came off like that was the one thing that kind of sucked is they kind of set up this world where there's cleaners who dispose
Oh,
of
yeah,
cursed
yeah,
bodies,
I
and
forgot
she's
about
one of them. And so when she talks, it's so comical.
Exactly.
Where she's like, grab the pedestal with the telescope and the dial so I can blah blah blah, and you're
Yeah.
like, this just feels so out of place with
Yeah,
the
yeah.
whole movie.
And she had a monologue in the truck with the main guy when they were heading there, and I thought it was kind of like seeming really. Obviously, we can't speak Spanish, but it
Yeah.
seemed very monotone. I was like, she's like kind of describing something horrific, and
Yeah.
it seems not very.
Yeah, well, it's supposed to be like, oh, she's like a veteran, like, I've seen my days of demons,
Yeah.
but it just kind of, But I
I'll say
mean,
the main guy, he seemed like a very good actor, but the part he was playing was very like confused man who, and that's what it was.
Yeah.
But it was just
well,
kinda
yeah,
like,
it was confused angry man.
yeah. And then his brother, I thought was the best actor. He was like doing so
Playing
well.
Leia like the caring, thinking
Yeah.
person.
It's
I'd say 4.
yeah, at least a 3, definitely 4 would make sense.
Again, scares in a more like, not just generic way where it was like, it's scary when you think about like, if I'm in that situation, that's scary.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I was like, oh, I feel for that character because this sucks. I'm dreading this.
Yes. There were points where it felt like a zombie movie where you're like, oh, this is gonna spread.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of the feeling the whole time.
I mean, for me personally, I would say a 4.
Oh yeah. I
bec-
mean,
because
I
it was just
had
so-
a jump scare with the little girl scene because I did not expect. I know you said you had seen it, but I was not expecting it at
Oh,
all.
that's right. Yeah, that was like,
I was like,
Yeah.
it was like a crazy jump scare, like out of any other movie.
Yeah.
Where it was like, I was like,
but then
my-
it gets so creepy
Yeah.
when it's like, oh, she's fine.
Yes, I know.
And you're like, ooh, like, what the
Literally,
hell?
I feel like when that scene happened, all of my breath came out of my body. I was like,
Yeah.
"Ugh." And then when you see the dog dragging her, it's like horrific.
Yeah, and there's blood squirting everywhere.
Yes, like it's just ugh.
So with the storyline plot, it's nothing new, demons and whatever, but I will elevate it just a little bit because they did enough of, it's not in your face, but again,
It's a world.
it's a world where
building thing,
it's a world where possessions happen all the time, and they have cleaners and how to properly dispose of a cursed body, and I was like, okay, these are interesting aspects. Now I wish we had seen just a little bit more,
Same.
but
I actually really like that because it was like I kind of get tired of possession movies where it's like there's a point where it's like what's happening, like oh, he's possessed. That didn't happen. They were like, oh, he's a cursed body.
Yeah, they know.
Before this happens, da da da.
So
it was really nice.
I'd say 4.
Yeah.
Well, the monster antagonist was more. It was like, it was technically one demon, and I think they even said its name. I can't remember. But it's the forms it took. The fat guy with the cysts, and then the mom with eating the kid, and then then
the son eating the grandma.
Yeah.
And then all those little kids that were in the school.
Oh yeah.
Creepy as well.
Yeah. I forgot about that. I mean, I'm also going based off design too, which I liked the design because it was so gross.
You know the man design, the cursed man design. It reminded me of that one director you like. What's his freaking name?
Director?
The one we watched the other movie of.
What?
Do you know what I'm talking about?
You're saying the cursed fat pimply guy?
No, just the style of them doing that.
Oh.
Reminded me of we watched the vampire movie. What is that actor or the guy's name? You don't know what I'm talking about?
Oh, I mean, are you talking about Guillermo?
Yeah, it reminded me of that kind of vibe.
Oh,
like
okay.
He would do,
yeah, that's true.
like
yeah.
his designs.
Yeah. There's definitely a lot of gore in this movie. I mean, and it's like child gore.
It's like horrific.
Yeah.
Like the mom was literally eating the son's brain.
Yeah. And then the little girl with the dog biting her neck, and then them getting hit by a car, and the son eating the damn.
Oh, that was so gross when he was pulling the hair out.
Yeah.
I guess that's not gore, but there was blood on it.
Yeah.
If it's not, it's like
4.
a 4 at least.
Watchability, enjoyability. I wouldn't say I enjoyed it, but I would
watch it again because I feel like we missed stuff.
Yeah, so I was glad to have seen it.
Yes.
And it's definitely a movie where if I, do a spooky movie, whatever, I would definitely probably be like, hey guys, just check this out.
Yes.
This movie's pretty crazy. So I would, again, probably, this is getting straight 4s on this one.
Heck yeah.
28.5. Now here's a real good one to talk about, for many reasons.
Oh, yeah.
Terrifier 2. And a quick context on this, because I said it in my Terrifier 3 video, but I had seen All Hallows Eve forever ago. I mean, probably like 2016, 2017. Didn't think anything of it. And then I realized they made Terrifier, which is like, an actual concept of that Art the Clown character. Didn't really give a shit for Terrifier. Felt like it was, no story, stupid slasher movie, whatever. And then Terrifier 2 came out a couple years ago, or last year, and everyone, they were going like, oh my god, like crazy, like everyone's gonna go see it, it's making so much money, like it's getting great reviews. And so finally we decided to watch it not too long ago, and I was like just genuinely shocked that it had likable characters, an interesting story, and was like, I guess horror movie. I wouldn't say necessarily scary, but a horror movie. Now, you could say with this, of course, like it's just almost like torture porn, like just graphic to be like edgy almost. And especially when I'm watching Terrifier 3, it kind of like, which we'll talk about later, but
you're right though, it's shocking because I avoided watching this movie because Terrifier 1 was so
boring.
Yeah,
and so stupid.
Good. I was like, I'm not gonna watch Terrifier 2. Terrifier 1 wasn't good.
But the best thing that this movie does, and it sucks because they repeat it in the third one, almost beat for beat, is it gives a Dream Warriors kind of feel where it really captures that 80s nostalgia vibe. Yeah. It's got the grainy film, the synth wave, and then the whole aspect that her dad got this magical sword and drew this angelic hero, and then she makes the armor of it, and the sword actually has magic powers because it turns out like angels and demons are real, and they flesh it out more in Terrifier 3, but like there's just this cool like 80s like legend and labyrinth like fantasy feeling, where you're like, okay, now we've been elevated above just stupid slasher movie, which it is kind of jarring where it's like this really good story, and then they go, well, we don't really know how to just like get to the next scene, so let's just hard cut to Art the Clown viciously murdering somebody, and you're like, okay, you know, that's pretty gross, and of course the kills are disgusting, whatever. But you know, obviously of the three that's come out so far, I like the second one the most.
And another thing you said while we watched it that is like I thought it was so true was it kind of gives a Nightmare on Elm Street vibe because she has that whole dream sequence.
Well, that's what I was saying. It's like Dream Warriors, where it's
what's Dream Warriors?
That's Nightmare on Elm Street,
Oh,
the
okay.
Dream Warriors, where it's like there's like a whole dream sequence where it's ripped straight from Friday the 13th.
And doesn't she wake up and she's injured or something?
Yeah, she got like a handprint or something on her.
Yeah.
And then even at the end where it's like full on magical. I mean, there's like, you know, a hole in the ground to hell. But like she's like going to hell, and then it's like the magic power of the sword, you know, like heals her. Yeah. And so you're like, oh, okay, wow. It's like being elevated to more like interesting elements. And so, you know, I think the Art the Clown is like, it's fine, it's cool.
Yeah.
But it's, to me, it's just gonna get old real quick, where it's just gonna be Saw, where it's what crazy thing can Art the Clown do to make people be like, ew.
Yeah, I agree.
And so it's like, okay. But cinematography, I mean, I thought was a little above average. I think they just did a great job of mimicking like 80s movies with the shots and everything. So
3.5. I don't know if I'd call it a 4 because it's not like they didn't have artsy shots really.
They didn't. It was almost a lot of just standing still shots, like open wide shots.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, I can appreciate the callbacks to 80s movies. The acting was, so I really liked
it.
It's
like a mixed bag because there's some really bad actors and then there's some like pretty good ones. Well,
it's like the main girl, great job.
Yes.
The brother, I believed him as this like wimpy ass nerd. I like that. The mom, there were parts where I was like, okay, I get it, and then parts where I'm like, this seems like fake.
Yeah, I think I even said it while we watched it. I was like, this seems really low budget. One of the times the mom was talking, I was like, this either the script wasn't good or she just like couldn't.
Well, and you know, as believable as the friends are, you just have to always, and it just annoys me with horror movies where you go, you know, like, how does a friend group like this form? Like usually, especially in high school, you're kind of hanging out with people relatively like-minded like you, and so they're in high school, but it's like she's kind of just like your normie girl, but then she's got like kind of the like more like happier girl friend, and then she's got like the drug abusing crazy friend, and you're just like, what is this friend group? Like, where does this come from? You know,
Art the Clown, it's like such an interesting character to even try to play. So
well, it's basically a mime murderer clown. And obviously the actor who plays him does a great job with facial, you know, for a killer that doesn't talk, he's great with his facial gestures. And, you know, where it's almost like a cartoon. And, you know, of course the kills were pretty gory. Nothing like 3, but
I think in this one, probably one of the worst kill scenes was the nice friend.
Yeah, the nice friend.
It's like absolutely like
and they keep going back to it.
I know.
And you're like, God damn, can she just die?
Well, it was like you said, it's like comic book of like, how is she still alive?
Yeah.
Like, what the hell?
I'm just gonna give it acting a 3. I mean, overall.
I think overall, when you take in account of every actor that was there, there's like I said, like there's some people who do a really good job, and there's some people who kind of drag it down.
Scares. I wouldn't say it really scared me. Besides,
you're
you know,
stressed out because like,
yeah.
you know,
Again, it's like unsettling, where you're like, what? You're like tense, where
like,
it's
where
like,
is he? You know?
ugh, and like, just.
I think scares might be like 3, and then gore would be super high.
Yeah, 3 is pretty standard. So storyline plot, which we kind of already just went over, I'd actually give it a 4.
Yeah.
Because I just really liked that they really improved it with the whole fantasy aspect. Art the Clown, monster antagonist. honestly, I would say 3.5 because
the only reason why I think it might be higher is because now he's like an icon. I feel like
he is iconic, but when you look at it realistically, he's just the way he acts is basically mute Freddy Krueger. Because Freddy Krueger eventually became like the jokey murderer that chases you. And Art the Clown is basically a jokey murderer, but he just can't talk. But I get a lot of Freddy Krueger vibes from Art the Clown. And so I was like, I don't really feel like it's wholly original, really.
Okay.
And so I was like...
It is just black and white, too.
I mean, I'd say... You know what? I'm sorry. I'd say 3.5. It's unique enough, but... I'm still just like, it's just kind of derivative. Gore is going to be
5.
like a 5.
I'm trying to think. The only thing gorier than this is Terrifier.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's Terrifier. Yeah. Watchability, enjoyability. I would definitely rewatch Terrifier 2.
For sure.
So
I feel like this is the type of show you could like, or movie that you would like rewatch again on Halloween with friends who like slashers.
Yeah, and you're just like, oh god, you know. I'd say 4.5 because I don't think it's, you know, I mean, again, everything's subjective, but you would have to tell your friends ahead of time, like, you okay with like, because people could say they like spooky Halloween movies, and then you show them that, and they're like, oh god.
That's not what I meant.
Yeah, like they're like, I'm not vibing with that.
You gotta be real like I'm just saying, like a Halloween, Michael Myers, that doesn't even come close.
Yeah.
It's like, if they're kind of like squeamish with that, then it's like...
Yeah. Prom Night, 1980.
I had to take some notes on this one because I did forget some of the stuff that happened.
So this is one, again, they've remade it, but the original stars Jamie Lee Curtis. I'm going to be real, my personal thoughts, I don't understand all the hype for Jamie Lee Curtis in the 80s because... she's fine in Halloween, but then she's in like The Fog and another one we watched where I'm like,
is she not the Scream Queen? Like,
I guess, but it doesn't even really seem like it does. I don't know. I was just like, okay, you know. And then it was just, at least in this movie, it wasn't like The Fog where they were like, she's a sex object for a 50-year-old man. Thank God.
True.
But basically, you know, it's prom night. Well, actually, it starts with a little girl getting killed because she like gets, you know, these fucking kids in the 80s are playing or like it's supposed to be like the 60s or whatever,
I think they're playing
or
tag.
70s.
Yeah.
Well, they're playing like tag, except one person's a serial killer and they're like kill, and so they like horrifically like scare a girl until she runs out of a window and falls and dies.
What's so funny about that too is they do it so slowly, so it's like, why? Like, I could understand maybe if you did it on accident, like, real quickly, like, ran by scared.
Yeah.
They're, like, standing there for, like, it's
yeah,
like a
and she's
5-minute
like,
scene of slowly doing
the window, oh!
I know, like...
And then they're like, immediately, they don't even try to check on if she's okay. The moment she falls down, they're like, we're never going to talk about this again. And you're like, wow, that was quick. Yeah, okay. Yeah. And then you see a shadow of someone trying to walk away, and you find out that it's Jamie Lee Curtis's character. It was her sister who died. And so she still got a brother. And so, you know, you're like, oh, well, who's in it? And Leslie Nielsen is in this fucking movie for some reason. He's her dad, the principal, where he's like he's a comedic actor. Yeah. And he's randomly in the movie, barely in the movie.
And he's not very important either.
No. And so I was just like, what? Like, what?
I feel like they had him in there only to make it seem like he could have been the killer.
Yeah, because they're like, famous actor. Yeah. But then, of course, everyone's going to prom, and they're doing the whole, you know, getting a phone call from a guy on a rotary phone, and, you know, ooh, like, you know, are you going to love prom, whatever, like, or, you know, do you remember blah, 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 and so you're sitting here like, who's the killer? Okay, and then they introduce the most random character who's in the high school, who's, like, a gross, non-bathing, unibrowed, borderline rapist?
Well, he like gropes Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yeah, and they're in the lunch line, and he runs up and starts like grabbing her ass and her boobs.
He's wearing a mask.
Yeah, and he's wearing a ski mask, and then the brother gets so mad that he starts beating him up, and then they go to the principal's office, and he's like, "You're gonna defend your son because you're the principal and he's your son." It's like, bro, you try to like sexually assault,
my daughter.
The principal's daughter at the lunch line. What do you mean? Like I'm being biased? And you're just like. they tried so hard to be like,
And
either
the
he's
brother, I feel like the brother didn't even go crazy. He just like kind of pushed him off him and then like started kind of like hitting
yeah.
him. He didn't like go
But they were just like,
overboard.
"Whoa, bro, what are you
Yeah,
doing?" I'm like,
calm
he's
down.
defending his sister. What the fuck do you mean?" And so people start getting killed. Honestly, and very boring. Like maybe in the 80s they were like, "Oh, this is so scary."
It was
But
long and drawn out.
it was long drawn out, and I'm like, they either kept cutting away from it, or you're like, "What?" Like, oh, okay. Like, I'm not saying it has to be like Terrifier where it's extremely gory, but I was like, nothing.
Well, and another thing is like, I don't know if this was just because we're spoiled on other movies, but the killer had like no finesse at all. Like he was like getting like,
oh yeah,
they were,
the
like,
killer,
running away from
yeah,
him so
the killer
easily
kept
and-
fumbling all the time. It was like so funny.
Yeah.
I mean, it made it more believable where you're
That's
like,
true.
okay, this is just a regular ass person.
Yeah.
But it was so funny just seeing them constantly fumble, and you're like, who is this?
Yeah, get outsmarted and stuff. The scene where he's like killing the one friend who I thought was innocent, and then that short guy. And that van, he was like hanging on the van. And
Yeah.
Kind of funny.
But it's so interesting because you're like, it's the 80s where it's like no cameras, no nothing. So of course some guy just walks into a building and starts killing people.
Well, what's funny is a guy who got framed for the murder of the little girl, it gets released from prison. That's a whole side plot.
That's right.
And then he gets caught again. So you're like, oh, so he's not the killer. And so they have cops at the prom, guarding all the students, and still so many students get killed.
And it's so sad that they don't really go more into like, oh, we wrongly accused this man.
Yeah.
Oopsie.
Seriously.
Because plot twist, you find out it's Jamie Lee Curtis's brother who's the killer, because he's the one who found the body and saw the kids leave. And I guess it just kind of makes you wonder why, if he saw it, he didn't immediately tell his parents. I saw these 3 kids push my sister out the window.
It's kind of his fault, too, that guy's in jail. If he had seen it, and then he didn't say anything and let the other guy get arrested.
And so, like, they don't really go over that, and you're like, I just don't get why the fuck didn't he say anything.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
And another thing is, like, one of Jamie Lee Curtis's friends was one of those little girls, so the brother's just been okay with them being friends.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay.
Well, and it's also, like, 12 years later, and you're like, Jamie Lee Curtis is supposed to be like 16, 17, but she's clearly probably like 20.
She's at least 20, like 6.
Yeah.
Probably. Another thing I had noted about this movie is there's an extremely long dance scene in the movie. Do you remember?
Oh, yeah.
It's like 10 minutes long.
Yeah, where it's them dancing. We're like, okay, like we get the point. Like,
It's like a cute vibe, but it's like, let's get back to the killer.
Well, yeah, it's we get the point.
Yeah.
So, cinematography, I mean, it was
80s.
It was very standard 80s. So I would say 3. Which people might go, oh well, you gave Terrifier 2 3.5 for callbacks. Why wouldn't you give this 3.5? I'm like, because this is like, it's doing, in my opinion, like a mix of new and old.
Yeah,
like a fair callback.
It looks like the 80s because they had the 80s cameras. They weren't doing something special.
Yeah,
to, like,
exactly.
You know.
Acting, I would say was either standard or a little, honestly, on like 2.5 because, but that's what most 80s movies where the acting sucks.
I think one of the weirdly best actors in this movie you barely see is the mom, because she's like,
that's right.
She acts so crazy. Well, not crazy. She's like so depressed still, and so when you're watching the movie, you keep thinking, is it the mom?
That's right.
They
that's
keep
right.
Kind of like.
Yeah. I completely forgot about that character too. 1.
Oh yeah, it's not scary.
It's not scary. Story plot line, I would give a 3 because I feel like it's standard.
Yeah.
Even for the 80s, it was literally just slasher movie, different setting.
You could say it's a plot twist because when it's the brother, it is a little bit shocking. Where it's like,
I would have liked it more if they would have been like, oh, he said it was those kids, but then all those kids said like, no, we were like, and then made the brother look bad. Yeah. And then you could even maybe had it where the brother was maybe accused, or there was a bad, shadow over the brother, and that's why he's like, oh, I'm gonna fucking kill these people. But they just time skip, and they're like, eh.
Yeah, true.
Like, eh.
It's just a guy in a all black
ski mask.
Ski mask.
Standard, middle of the road. gore. I don't remember there being really any.
Is there even blood, really?
I think there was definitely blood.
I'm not remembering even a lot of blood, though. Oh, they cut the unibrow guy's head off, remember? They cut his head off behind stage and then throw his head out.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe a 2.
Okay, 2. The only reason I would rewatch this movie again is if I did like an 80s theme Halloween party or something. So,
2.
yeah. And that's being generous.
It would have more points if it was like a better, like it wasn't so slow, because it does have that 80s vibe, but the story is just kind of boring.
Yeah. So, next, absolute piece of shit. This is about to be 0.
Well, here's the thing about this movie that is amazing. When we watched this movie, we thought nothing could be worse than this, and we were actually wrong.
That's true. Like, this set the bar for me for actual, like, this has to be money laundering or the other word, embezzling, or like, you know,
it's like a front
or
for something.
Yeah, or it's like, you know, you owe your buddy a favor and he says his nepo baby kid wants to make a movie and you fund it or something.
Think until another movie we watch on this list, I don't know if I've ever seen a movie this poorly done.
Yeah.
That felt like it was maybe like a senior high school movie project, or
if that. I mean, because here's the thing. Here's the most fucking annoying thing with this movie.
Real evil, by the way. If you want
for a movie that's supposed to be, you know, found footage ghost movie.
Yeah.
50 to 60% of the fucking movie is just topless women or just full on just sex scenes.
I've literally never seen so many like bare chests in a movie.
That's what I'm saying.
Until this movie.
And it's so prolonged where you're like, this has quite literally nothing to do with it. It's not even like a setup payoff thing.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah. And it's like you said, it's not like in some horror movies where it's like, oh, real quick. It's like the camera is like zoomed in for like 3 minutes.
Well, especially right in the beginning. It's like a full on like sex scene.
Yeah, it actually is. Yeah, you're right.
And it shows almost like everything where you're like, what does this have to do with it? Basically, they have this prolonged scene just for the other 2 camera people to go, where's our camera? Oh, I'm like, we didn't need that.
Oh.
We didn't need a 5-minute just scene of that to then pay off with that. And horrible CGI. It's like, is this where your money went? I mean, I feel bad for these women where I'm like, how much did they pay you?
I don't know,
because that's embarrassing as fuck. And
it's
such a stupid story where it's like, we're trying to fund our movie, so we're shooting B-roll for this documentary. Like, oh, I want to do more with my life. And then they're like, let's go to the downstairs of the asylum. Ooh, we're finding spooky stuff. And then the rest of the fucking movie, because they're trying so hard to be Grave Encounters, the rest of the movie is just the same scene over and over again in the same set.
You told a really funny joke while we watched it, too, because you were saying, because they have, like, this camera set up, and it's, like, all these doors in a hallway, and they were doing, like, a Scooby-Doo
Yes,
montage.
they literally just said, this would be scary. And it's, like, it's a hallway, 8 doors. It's pointed where you can see all the way down the hallway, and the whole thing is supposed to be that they're trapped in there, so they'll walk and then appear again.
Yeah.
And then at one point, the asshole director does it, and he's like, huh? What the hell?
It's like comical.
Yeah, it's like funny.
Yeah.
And all I can think is the Benny Hills soundtrack, or just the Scooby-Doo, like, where I was like, this is stupid. And then like the stupid jump scares they do where it's like horrendous CGI.
It was probably some of the worst I've ever seen.
And it goes up to the and then they have like one little set which is like a receptionist desk of an abandoned hospital with a prop up light. And they keep just going only there, going, oh my god, we're lost again. And they just keep going there, and they're like, we're walking in circles. And I'm like, I get what you're trying to do, but it's so obvious you're just reusing the same tiny set you have.
Yeah. The one, even remotely you could say positive thing about this movie is some of the scenes where they're walking through like tunnel looking hallways, That looks pretty cool. Like, they probably did find a real place for that. But every other place they go to looks like a set built into a studio.
Well, and then the cinematography.
0, if not. You can give 0.
Yeah, it was a piece of shit. Acting, 0. Literally, this movie.
Okay, wait, who's the best actor?
The best actor? God,
Hear me out. I think it was the actress who's supposed to be a bitch because she kind of seemed believable.
That's true. She's supposed to be a bitch, and she definitely came off as a bitch. And then randomly is like, they're like, help, help, and then it's her and some backstage guy, and she's like, yeah, you want to fuck me, don't you? And you're like, where is this coming from?
Yeah.
And he's just like, I'm a backstage guy. And I'm like, this is so stupid.
Yeah, it's very stupid.
0 scares.
Yes. 0.
I think this movie's about to get a 0 on everything.
I mean, the monsters CGI, and then they got a couple guys in like nurse costumes.
Yeah.
Gray.
Yeah, they could have made it creepy. I don't know what it's doing there, but they could have made it creepy, like Autopsy of Jane Doe, where it's like the creepy zombies and you see the feet, something. No, and gore, 0. The only reason someone would rewatch this movie is because they just want to see naked women.
This is like what a teenage boy.
Yes, this is.
They say they want to watch a movie, but they actually just want to.
Yeah. This is what like an edgy, like teenage boy would be like. Dude, this movie is so good, and you'd be like, shut up.
Yeah.
Shut the fuck up. Just again, absolute piece of shit movie.
We didn't pay to rent it, did we? I think we
No. It was on Amazon Prime Video, whatever. Just like, I remember obviously I know what's worse than this, but this movie was like.
It shook me. I feel like after we watched this, we were like, let's take a break from watching movies.
Yeah. Well, I was like, wow. I already thought found footage was cheap and stupid, but you somehow made it where it's like unbearably stupid.
For sure.
Like, wow. Next movie, The Howling. 1981 werewolf movie. Pretty interesting. I know werewolves, because we did watch Dog Soldiers. I don't think it's on this list because I think we watched it a month or two ago. But because I didn't really care for Dog Soldiers, but people love it. But The Howling is interesting. I kind of wish. So it starts off where you're like, oh, there's a guy murdering women. And then obviously you're like, okay, he's a werewolf. Yeah. I thought they would that setup would make it where the whole movie is like kind of like a true crime. Like it might be like a cop working with the victim to find this killer, and it turns out it's werewolves, and it's like in the New York City, like, oh, gross and whatever, or LA.
Yeah, the first 10 minutes of the movie made me so excited because I love true crime stuff, like from older stuff. And I was like, oh, this is going to be so good. But then they so quickly wrap that up.
Yeah, wrap it up. And then the whole movie is just, well, you're on a treatment island where we treat people with PTSD or whatever. But it's so obvious right from the get-go that every motherfucker on that island is a werewolf. Yeah. Because the way they're acting. And I'm like, and even the teacher or the professor, I'm like, it's so obvious you're all in on it. Yeah. Like, God, I wish they would have done a better job of being like, they wanted to recruit her as a werewolf. And
they fumble so quickly by making the brother of that main werewolf girl so creepy. You're like, there's something wrong with him. And they could have just like not showed him, and it may have even been more believable.
Well, and then they kind of set up that creepy guy, his sister, is like basically just fucking everyone there. Yeah, or something. That like when they're werewolves, she's banging.
Like the alpha.
Or I don't know, or something. I don't know, but because the main lady, her husband, gets turned into a werewolf, and then they just start fucking, and it's like this prolonged scene of them just like, and it's just like full frontal, where you're like, wow, okay, for this movie. And
what I loved about that whole setup is there was no like, as soon as he came home from having sex with the wolf lady, his wife knew, and she was like, "Where were you?"
Yeah, she's like, "What are those scratches?" She's like, "Mind your own business."
And she's like, "No, I know what's going on."
Yeah, and he's like, and just leaves. And it just like, I don't know. Maybe it's because of how old we are and like when this movie came out, but
Yeah.
I was like, if you're already trying to set up that she's going here for PTSD, you should have had it where like there's even a scene where she's like, there's werewolves here, and everyone transforms back real quick and is like, no, she's crazy, she attacked us, that's why everything's a mess. Like,
Yeah.
psychological, like,
yeah, they did a half-assed attempt of that because they try to get her to talk about it again on TV. She's a news anchor, and they do like a half-assed attempt of like, she's like, I can't talk about, you know what I mean? And that's all they do to set up her having PTSD.
Yeah, they don't really take time to be like, her PTSD. It's just immediately like 6 months later, I'm at this clinic, and then they're just like, werewolves.
Yeah.
And then they kind of like, it's funny kind of, but like
the practical effects were kind of cool. Like
practical effects were good, but then it's what annoys me, but it's like kind of funny and also believable, is that in New York City there's like a curio shop ran by some guy who's like, this is all dumb shit. And he's like, but I do have a case of silver bullets from Transylvania, and I'm like,
I love that because it was so like well, he had to be there to like make the movie work.
Yeah, but it was also believable that he's just like, listen, I don't fuck it, because they're like, do you believe in this? He's like, I don't give a shit. I'm just here to sell books to weirdos.
And they're like, what about werewolves? He's like, right here, this page, this book, because he's already read it. Some shit.
And so practical effects pretty good. Again, remember, you and I were both like, okay, I get that it's cool to see someone transform into a werewolf, but that scene felt like 15 minutes.
It was so slow.
And you're
I
like,
feel like if it had been like real, it's like,
girl,
not
run
scary.
away.
Yeah, it was
it's not scary, and you're like, why is she just standing there? Run away.
Yeah.
Dude is taking 20 minutes to transform.
It was cool looking though.
Yeah, it was cool looking. You are like, wow, and then later on when she cuts off the werewolf's arm and the effect of it slowly moving but transforming back to a human hand, I was like,
cool.
Wow, no CGI, that looks great.
Yeah. I will say, when they're in the barn at the end and it's a bunch of them, it doesn't look as cool. They kind of toned down a little bit.
Well, and it looks so goofy when they're like mid transformation.
Yes.
And they're like hissing. And I was like, this just looks stupid.
Yeah.
This looks goofy. Interesting ending, kinda, where the whole thing is she gets infected and they're like, no one will believe us.
Thing, yeah.
And she's like, well, I'm going to go on the news because I'm a news anchor, and you're going to shoot me live while I transform into a werewolf. And I was like, did he really need to shoot you?
That's what I thought. I was like, you can still be good after you
transform. And what didn't make sense is they showed us what a female werewolf looks like. They all look the same.
Yeah.
But when she transforms, she looks distinctively odd, not like a werewolf. She doesn't have a large snout. She has white hair. And it's really weird where you're why is her werewolf transformation different?
I don't know why my brain thought it was because she was like blonde and no one else was blonde.
Maybe,
her husband was blonde.
But that's why I'm like, what? Like, where's this coming from? Cinematography, they had some cool landscape shots.
I personally like the shot where she's trying to get the serial killer and he's behind her, and the way they did that. Yeah. I think that probably would have been a hard scene to
where
shoot.
It's the light around him, and you only see and they shined it just right where it almost looks like a white line around his figure.
And it's obviously like a really tight area too, so the way they filmed it, it feels tight, but also you see him quickly. It is very well done.
3.5.
3.5.
Yeah, 3.5. Acting, I thought the main lady was a great actor. The store guy was good.
Yeah.
The husband's acting wasn't too bad, but he, they just have him flip from like vegan nice guy to like angry cheating husband.
I forgot about that. He was like not eating bacon, and then like the next day he was like eating a raw steak.
Yeah. Let's say 3. Scares.
Not scary. It's stressful when her friend gets caught.
Is being chased.
It's like, oh no, like get out. But like you said, he transforms for 20 minutes and she doesn't.
Yeah.
Maybe a 2.
Yeah. Story plot. Again, I thought it was getting set up for something really crazy at the beginning, and then just kind of flatlines. I'd say it's a standard.
3.
For a werewolf movie, I guess. The werewolf design is good.
They don't carry out the quality throughout the whole movie, but
Yeah.
the one is like super good.
I'd say 3. Well, no. What did I give? Oh, okay. I'm actually gonna give that a 2.
2.
Yeah. Gore. The only gory thing I can remember is the girlfriend getting torn up, and then the arm being cut off. So, yeah. Well, I'll give it a 3. Watchability, enjoyability. I just don't care to watch this again.
I wouldn't watch it again.
I really don't. I guess if you're a werewolf fan, maybe, but
If you love 80s movies, you probably really like it.
yeah, I mean, it's got like your 80s tropes.
Yeah.
So
It's got the 80s outfits, the 80s hair. It's got like kind of a cool vibe, but yeah.
The Boogeyman 2023.
Okay, so this is one of my favorite ones we've seen so far.
Yeah, so this movie, so I remember seeing trailers of it, but I was like, oh my god, like with that title, I was like, is this a remake? Something like, it sounds so fucking stupid. And then we were like, okay, it's gonna be dog shit. Let's watch it.
Yeah.
And
There's
then
something about like having low expectations for some of these movies that really plays in their favor.
Well, I mean, when you have a movie called The Boogeyman, you're like, that sounds stupid as fuck.
Yeah, they took like the most obvious trope. And,
Yes.
like,
But then it's shocking when it's very well made, very well acted,
very touching.
and
story.
very touching. It's to me, this is where Lake Mungo failed, where it has a theme of grief with horror, and it blends it perfectly. And there's setup and payoff.
It's like so good to me that it's like if you took the horror element out of it, it would probably still be a good movie.
Yeah.
Like the story of like them overcoming something.
But it mixed so well where it's like, yes, there's the curse of the boogeyman, but you could even almost say that the boogeyman itself is like the just evil blockage of like grief for the girl of like her mom dying. And like it taking this like insane battle.
It's like their grief was like manifesting. Even without the boogeyman being there, it was like manifesting into other stuff in their life. Like the girl was like kind of losing her friends. The little girl was kind of not feeling very safe. Well, not safe, but
now
comfortable.
I will say the true thing that bugs me is the like ambiguous ending.
Yeah, that did bother me.
So it bothered me that it set up this like extremely emotional payoff, and they just couldn't fucking help themselves from basically telling you that the boogeyman's not dead. Yeah. And it was like, really?
I know. You could interpret it because they were at the therapist's office, and you could interpret it as like, you don't really overcome grief. It just kind of like maybe doesn't play as such a big part in your life anymore. It's like still always there. You could interpret it like that, but I was really disappointed when they did the stinger. I was like, no, they did it.
Because there is no like, oh, you just keep the boogeyman at bay. No, the boogeyman, like, if he's there, he's going to kill your whole family. Yeah. So I was like, there is no way of believing that it's like, oh, well, now she has to live with that. The boogeyman is always there, but she can overcome it. I'm like, it almost killed her whole family. Yeah. And so when they did that stinger ending, I'm like, this is really cheap.
Yeah, I thought so too.
Honestly, what it should have been is just they go to therapy and that's the end. Or they still try to do this stinger where, the therapist says, hey, come back here for a minute. And then she's like freaking out like, oh my God, like, what is it? And then the therapist goes, oh, hey, sorry, I was calling you over. I just went to go grab like a water or something, where it's like a fake stinger, where it's like the boogeyman is dead. And you think it's the boogeyman because the therapist is like, come back here, and it's gone. But she's like, sorry, I just went to the other room.
Oh, yeah, that would be good. Because I thought they were doing that. I thought they were like, oh, she still has like PTSD from it. But they could have also done it because the way the boogeyman works is like he kind of transfers. They could have done where it's like this family is done with it, but other families are dealing with grief. Yeah. So she hears about another family, whatever it was.
Or even another family is like in the waiting room and then it passes to them. Exactly. And you're like, oh.
Because the way it passes is a little bit confusing as well.
Yeah, well, where it's like someone with grief like dies near you, and if you have grief, it like latches.
I don't even know if they have to die near you, do they?
I don't know, because they said the boogeyman latches on to like sadness and like grief and trauma.
Because the husband character from the first family who has the boogeyman, he does die there, but
well, he gets killed by the boogeyman.
Yeah, is that what has to happen? Because his wife was still alive.
Yeah.
So their family wasn't even like.
Well, I was just like, the boogeyman follows you, but then like, yeah, the wife's just chilling at home with a shotgun, and it was like, so the boogeyman has physical form, but then I really hate when it's such a good payoff, and then they slap you across the fucking face by going, no, he's unkillable. I was like, okay, well, it takes away, honestly, a lot of goodwill, because I loved every minute of that movie, and then it's the last 10 seconds that just pissed me off.
It's been a while since a horror movie, like, I was like trying not to cry at that point.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
I was like, oh my god, like, you don't even care about, like, obviously the boogeyman's scary, but you want this girl to do well. You want her to be okay and her family to
and you're just like, God, like, the dad being a therapist, and how, but he can't even talk to his own kids about the grief of their mom, his wife, and you know how it affects. And there's that fucking bitch at the school.
She's like comically.
Yeah, she's like comically a huge bitch, but it's like, wow, like this girl is like just trying to deal with the grief of her mom dying. But she can't talk to her dad.
She doesn't have any support system.
Yeah.
Her friends are not doing a great job, and they're actually making it worse. Her dad won't speak to her about it, and her sister actually kind of needs her more than she needs, you know.
And so it's a lot of responsibility, and then on top of that, you throw in the boogeyman, and it's just
there's like so much to unpack with this movie, too, because they even do stuff where it's like, they're like packing up the mom's stuff, and the boogeyman is kind of in that room a little bit.
Yeah.
And they do like kind of cool stuff with that, where you're like, you almost think like for a while like, are we? Is she
well, that's
crazy?
what I'm saying. It's very symbolic.
Yes, yeah.
Very symbolic. Great. I mean, again, cinematography, standard, but
I'm trying to think. If there's any really breakout scenes, and the only thing I can think of is the one scene where the little girl does the like blight ball under her bed. It looked pretty cool.
Yeah.
But other than that, it was kind of a standard kind of look.
I'm just gonna give it 3. I thought the acting was great. Besides the bitch friend who's like comically evil.
I know they made her like crazy evil. Like the first day back, the girl has after her mom dies, she like throws milk at her or something. I can't even remember.
Well, no, the girl comes back to school, and it was the last lunch her mom made her, but all the food's rotten, and she's like looking at it, and then she's like, and squishes it on her.
That's right.
And then she's like, go clean yourself up,
she's
bitch.
Just laughing.
Yeah, and you're like, what the fuck? And she's like, I don't know how you're still friends with that bitch. She's so depressing. You're like,
isn't she the one too that's like, what's this dress? Oh, your mom's dress. You really probably shouldn't be wearing that.
Yeah, she's like, why, you freak? Yeah, and you're like, God, and then I'm like, boogeyman, kill this dumb bitch. And of course it doesn't. I'm like,
oh. And then she locks her in that room where that guy died.
Well, she locks her in the room, and then her friend's like, we tried to open the door, we couldn't. It's like, well, you still threw her ass in there. Because they're like, bro, why are you so mad? And I'm like, you initially, and then the dumb bitch is like, face your fears.
Oh, I know. And then when she like punches her, she's like, your daughter's a freak or something.
Yeah, I was like, I wish the boogeyman would just kill this dumb girl.
Oh, I know. The boogeyman looked pretty scary too. I know we'll talk about that in a second, but
yeah, I'd give this a 4 storyline plot.
I think you should give it a 5 just because I was like about to cry.
That's true. That is pretty rare. Monster. So I thought it was almost kind of so.
Here, I have a picture of it.
To me, it just reminds me of the Wendigo from Fallout 76, where I was like,
so I don't know what that is.
It kind of.
He kind of looks like a werewolf.
So the face is cool,
yeah,
but the body is so stereotypical. The face is cool because he's got freaking hands that come out of his mouth.
That's true. Yeah.
So that's cool. It reminded me of the Ritual a lot. So.
And another thing about him that I thought was super creepy is he was mimicking voices.
Oh,
really
yeah.
They used that super well, especially with the younger daughter, and I was like, ooh, this is really creepy.
That's right.
And also, he could like really kill like grown men very easily.
That's true. Gore. I don't remember there really being gore.
Yeah, because the first guy that dies, it looks like he's hung.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't even look
Well,
like
a lot of it's like
Cody.
off screen, like implied.
Yeah.
5.
Now, actually, I don't know if I'd want to watch it again because it's so emotional.
I mean,
It was good. It was. Really,
I mean,
really
it's
good.
a good movie in my opinion. Where I'm gladly like, I definitely want to watch it again with friends and stuff. Like I would 100% watch it. So the next one is Haunt, and so I can't remember if this movie came out this year. I know it's pretty new, and again, I looked at the trailer and I was like, it could be extremely shitty, could be really good. It reminded me kind of Hellfest,
Yes.
but it's the idea that it's a haunted house, but it's like actually, murderers and stuff. And overall, I'll say the movie is good. It's got the group of friends. The acting overall is not bad.
I'd watch it again.
I'd 100% watch it again. They introduced something that does frustrate me, though, where I get not everything always needs an answer, but they show you that the killers aren't just like normal dudes. It's like, I don't know, demon worshippers.
It's so iconic though, because when they pull the mask off, they're scarier. They look scarier than the mask. So
that's true. They're scarier under the mask, but I was just kind of like, huh? Like, and then there's like a woman, and she's like, I thought I could run away like you too, and you're like, wait, what?
yeah, it's
And
like,
they all got like
trapped?
messed up faces, and they're like, I want the perfect face. I'll take your face. And I'm like, well, what?
Yeah.
Like, what's with this cult thing or whatever? But
It's almost like a Saw movie at some point too, where you're like, why are they punishing these like?
Yeah, well,
kids?
it's one of those like, it's a group of college kids, and they're like, woo, let's go to a haunted house. And when they're driving to one, they're like, and then they also set up like the main girl, like she broke up with her boyfriend, and he's like a scary stalker, abusive, and which the payoff for that was really nothing, but
well, the payoff for that was she also had an abusive father, and
she
was so scared
and
in her
where
own
she's
house.
like, well, I guess the payoff is she's like, I don't want to end up like my mom or whatever.
Yeah.
Now I mean the ending has a great payoff, but in general, but it was a good, it did feel like a Saw movie where you're like, oh my god, traps, and how do they escape from here, and you're like, oh god, these psychos like take their phones and take their keys, and it's like really just like this gross feeling of like, ugh. I mean, but how they get there almost seems implausible, because like they pull over and they're like,
well, it kind of happens too because of the girl worried about her stalker boyfriend.
yeah, it's like, keep driving,
and then she sees a car and she's like, oh wait, turn right here. And they're like, why? And you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of...
well, but they pull over and they're like, what do we do now? And then comically, the lights come on. It's a haunted house. And they're like, I don't see this on the map anywhere. I'm like, yeah, I 100% would not do that. Unless I see, like, 300 cars outside and, like, people actively going in. No. Like, hell no. And then when they're like, you got to give us your keys, your phone, everything. I'm like, no.
I don't know if you felt like this too, but... this movie's a little bit jarring because when you start the movie, the acting of the college students is so bad. You're like, this is gonna be a shitty movie.
Yep. Yeah.
I remember watching this, and like when we first started, I was like, I kind of regret picking this because it's like the acting is like probably a little bit worse than a typical movie, and then maybe like not even halfway. I don't know, maybe halfway. Whenever shit starts getting real, some of the actors actually seem like better. I don't know.
Well, what also doesn't make sense to me is even before they start driving and they're in some random town, their college town, whatever, she's seeing like a tall man in red, which is basically one of the demonic guys in the haunted house. And
but
so
also,
I'm like,
her boyfriend texts her a picture of him wearing that.
Or
remember?
something, yeah, or
So
yeah.
I didn't understand that.
Yeah, I was like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
And
I don't think it was ever explained either.
Pretty, I think one of the first kills is, where it's like they're walking and they're like, oh my god, it's all fake, and this lady's like getting stabbed in the head by a poker, and they're like, wow, that looks pretty real.
I'm pretty sure Hellfest did that exact same bit where it's like you think it's a fake thing with the
yeah. So that's why it did remind me of, you could watch this and Hellfest like as a 2-in-1.
Oh yeah.
And it was interesting. You definitely you're like, oh my god, like, is she going to get out of this?
Yeah.
Oh my god. And then
what's like one of the scenes that really stuck with you for this movie?
Well, An interesting scene is like, when it's the hallway of like what looks like a bunch of people with sheets over their head, and then one moves,
Oh, that one was
and then
creepy,
he's
yeah.
like, "Help! We need help!" And then the guy actually comes back and is like, "You said someone's injured?
I thought
I'll
they
help
did
you."
that really well, where it's like you get to that point and you're like, oh wait, maybe it is a real haunted house. And
Yeah,
it's
well,
not
and you're like, he doesn't sound like a monster.
he does, and he sounds really nice.
Yeah.
And like he actually seems like he's on their side.
Yeah, but then it's constantly when they go, "Hey, if you're not trying to scare us, then take off your mask," and he just starts
He kind
going.
of changes the subject. He never says no, but
Yeah,
he just like,
and you're like, or he just won't reply,
Yeah.
and you're like,
Like,
okay,
okay.
that comes off a little creepy.
I think one of the worst scenes in the whole movie is when that guy who you think is at one point you think, oh, maybe he's a nice guy, when he's with the kind of comic relief.
Oh yeah,
character,
the Tim Dillon ass guy.
Tim Dillon character, and they get all the way out to where the car is.
Yeah.
And then he's like, do you still want to see what I look like under the mask? And the Tim Dillon character says, no, I'm okay.
Yeah.
And then it cuts to him showing a horrific face, probably the scariest thing you see the whole show, probably. And then he, like, bludgeons Tim Dillon,
and like rips his head off.
Yeah, he does, like, really
Yeah.
fucked up kill to him.
Yeah. I like the costume designs, like their masks and stuff.
Yeah. I loved it because the costume designs were creepy alone, but then when they showed the really kind of realistic looking fucked up faces, it's so awesome.
Yeah. No, it's I mean, cinematography again, pretty generic.
Yeah, I don't think I remember any like really even tense scenes of like where they used the camera to do tense scenes. The lighting is okay. I don't remember the lighting being
Yeah,
really...
I mean, it just felt very standard.
Yeah.
Very standard. Acting to me was standard. Like you said, it got better.
It got better, and it's like all of the evil characters, super great. They did a great job. The college kids did not do a great job. And they almost like, if you were watching this and you didn't have patience, you probably would have stopped before you got to the scary part.
Yeah. Scares is more tense.
It's very tense. Like when she's in that one last thing, when she's like in that bedroom, that was pretty tense.
Oh, yeah.
I remember thinking, she better hurry, man.
Yeah. I'd say 3.
Yeah.
I mean, it was pretty standard. Story, plot line, I'd say like a 2. Because they introduced the demonic people, but they don't really do anything with it.
Yeah.
So I was like, it's kind of a letdown.
And I wouldn't even say, they're not even really demonic. They're just weird.
They're just weird people with like...
They're not like super strong or like, you know, super
That's true, because they die like any other human.
Yeah.
I like their designs, though.
Oh, I did. I loved it.
So, that's a 4. I would say it was like...
It's probably like your typical slasher movie.
Yeah.
Nothing too like gratuitous.
Well, and they didn't really linger on too many like shots or anything.
There were a couple of things that were like horrific, where it's like when they were getting into that maze, and the one girl like barely didn't make it in, and they like stabbed her through the head.
Oh yeah,
that was pretty bad. But I was like, it was like a second, and then it was.
That's
gone.
right. That's right. I mean, watchability, I would say, is a 3. As in, like like again, we do a Halloween party, whatever. Like I'm watching this.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
It's one of them.
It's got a good Halloween vibe too.
Yes, especially with friends. And for this one is Annabelle Creation, and so I don't know if I've ever seen the other Annabelle movies, but I had heard good things about this one, and so that's why we chose to pick it. There's so much of the extended Conjuring universe that I don't even know.
Like The Nun last year, how horrible it was.
Yeah, that movie sucked. Curse of La Llorona is very stereotypical.
And what I hate about that universe of movies is they are obviously doing a good job. Like they pick that one lady who looks so cool, and they make her look very scary. And then like The Conjuring, I don't really know what they do in that one, but like The Nun, at least in the La Llorona one, I think they did a pretty good like character design in that one too.
Yeah, it was like a crying lady in like a wedding dress or something.
Yeah. So I mean, I hate that they do that, and then like
make it the most
scary,
generic
and
fucking jump scare dumb slot movie.
I think last year you called it like Chat GPT written.
Yeah,
it's kinda like that,
just slop AI.
It's like a corporate like movie studios like, let's make a scary movie, and this is what they get.
Yeah.
Kind of. But this, I was pleasantly surprised with this movie.
Yeah, this movie, I mean, it does have its cheap jump scares and stuff, and I really did hate the design of the devil because, to me, it just looked so generic. Like, I wish it was scarier, or if we just didn't see it, because it was even more creepier when it was just glowing eyes in the dark.
Yes, yeah.
But
the girl saw it in that little area.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely.
But you know, okay, it's like parents, 1950s, whatever. Their daughter gets ran over by a car. And
you don't find this out till later, but the mom basically makes a deal with the devil to be able to contact that little girl again.
Well, it's both of them. She said that they prayed to anything that would listen.
Oh, I didn't realize the dad wasn't okay.
That's why I showed both of them at the table. She was like, we prayed to anything that would listen to give us more time with our daughter. So what happened is a devil, you know, and here's what annoys me about all these fucking movies. So you're telling me demons, hell, whatever exists, where's the angels? Where's God? Like, and I mean, if anything, you know, you'd be kind of shocked where it's like every horror movie's like, oh, God doesn't listen, only the devil. Yeah. And you're like, that seems kind of weird. But, then they summon whatever that, I think they say the demon's name, but I can't remember, but.
And the demon fucks up the mom. Like, fucks up her face.
Yeah, like scratches her face, which obviously, the Annabelle doll in real life is a Raggedy Ann doll, which is scary, but not as scary looking as the damn doll in the movie. But it's annoying because they're like, we trapped the evil by sticking it in our house, in a shittily locked door with pages from the Bible. And then they're like, let's invite a whole orphanage to our thing.
Oh, I know.
Oh, no, they unlocked the door. The evil's out. I'm like, why the fuck didn't you build that room, like, underground, put it in there, and bury it with cement? Yeah. Or something. It was just the dumbest thing. And then, yeah, I mean, they do a good job, like, when those two girls are under the blanket, they're like, ooh, you know, his wife is a ghoul, whatever. Yeah. And then, like, it does a weird camera, like, shift where it's like, she's like, it's like a ghost flowing with the blanket where it's like a hand and a face. Yeah. And they pull it off and there's nothing there. I was like, ooh, that's spooky. Really cool, yeah. Or, you know, like when she's looking in the well and the hands come up and pull her and you're like, oh, wow.
I'm trying to think. They did like a thing with the scarecrow that wasn't super.
Yeah, cool. it was creepy at first, and then I was like, I don't care.
Yeah, it looked kind of goofy.
I think what these movies don't understand is what makes it more scary is when you actually just make it real life. Like with the scarecrow, they gave it like a face. Yeah. I'm like, what would have been scary is that it just looks like an inanimate fucking scarecrow and it gets up. Mm-hmm. With Annabelle, what would have been scary is that it just looks like a normal ass Raggedy Ann doll, but moves. Or whatever.
It almost, the Annabelle doll almost looks like a meme because it is almost funny looking.
Yeah, well, it's doing the.
Yeah, and it's got like the funny eyes.
It's doing the SpongeBob face where it's like, and you're just like, okay, you know, I thought the acting overall was good, and I thought it had some creepy moments.
I thought the story was pretty touching as well with the little girl with the polio.
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
Her friend, and they were orphans, and
yeah, until they're like, yeah, that girl with the fucking gimp leg or whatever. They're like, she's a demon girl now.
She can walk, and she also murders her parents.
Yeah, murders her parents, and you're just like, later. Oh. Yeah. Okay. Like, well.
But they set up a good, like,
what happens to the other girl?
She actually, like, goes back to the orphanage with the nun.
Oh, yeah,
she's fine. Like, she makes it out okay, but I think they're, like, the only ones, right?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's...
I would say it's above just, like, a corporate, like...
It doesn't feel as disgusting as The Nun.
Yeah.
But it's a... For a standard mainstream horror movie, it was enjoyable. Mm-hmm. Standard.
Yeah. I don't know if there was that many scares.
No, it was just like creepy.
Creepy vibes,
you know, where you're like,
too.
Ooh, story. I guess standard.
Yeah.
Like you said, there was some emotional weight and stuff. Again, great until you actually see it, and I just felt like it kind of looks stupid.
Yeah. 2 or 3.
2, yeah.
And I don't think there's any gore, is there?
I don't think so. I mean...
Well, okay, wait. The mom, doesn't she get, like, cut in half?
Oh yeah, and her intestines are like
Yeah,
out on the floor.
I think that's the only gory thing.
Okay, then I'll give that a 2. Standard 3.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd watch it again.
Yeah, I'd probably watch it again, but again, it's like
It'd have to be a while to
Yeah.
rewatch.
And maybe one day, you know, I'll watch the rest of the Conjuring movies and be like, oh, that's how they connect.
Yeah.
You know? Okay. But I guess for part 1, that'll be it. And then we can film part 2 tomorrow or whatever. But
So out of these, which scored the highest?
out of the first 10, the highest score is When Evil Lurks.
And I agree with that.
And then Terrifier 2 is right after it.
And then what? What's the 25?
The Boogeyman.
Okay, I agree.
So, yeah, for part 1, we'll do that.
What's the worst? Is it Real Evil?
Yeah, with a 0? Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, so...
So out of all of these, if you could recommend like 3, would it be the top 3 ones?
Yeah, I think so. It would be, yeah, I mean, Terrifier 2, The Boogeyman, and When Evil, yeah, I mean...
What if it was like somebody who doesn't like gory stuff? Like, you take Terrifier out, and probably When Evil Lurks as well.
I mean, if they don't like that, then I'd probably still say The Boogeyman and Annabelle Creation, probably, those 2.
Okay.
I really just could not recommend Lake Mungo to anyone because it's just such a stupid way to do something. But
what do you think you felt the most like disappointed with? Like when you.
I mean, I would say Lake Mungo because I've seen that poster since I was like 13, and I was just like, oh, like the mystique around it, and then finally watching it.
Find all the lists that have it right. And
yeah,
be like,
and yeah, go and read it and be like, what the fuck are you like thinking?
What are you on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that'll be it for part 1. Part 2 will be posted fairly quick in the coming days as well. So until next time, thank you for watching. I'm out.